6 months after the 18-minute battle, Harmony Station looked completely different from the small, forgotten mining colony it had once been. Cargo ships arrived daily bringing new colonists supplies and delegations from across the galaxy. The simple landing pad had been expanded into a proper spaceport, with docking facilities for vessels from dozens of different species. Lee Daeho stood in his observation tower, watching another transport ship land, carrying refugees from the Altair system. The Korth had been raiding human settlements there but stopped immediately after learning about Harmony Station. Word had spread that attacking human colonies was no longer safe or profitable. Administrator, the tower communication system, crackled with Kim So-ra voice. Another delegation from the Zeph Empire is requesting a tour of our defensive systems. Lee. Daeho smiled and shook his head. The fourth one this week. Tell them the same thing we told the others. Our mining equipment is available for inspection, but we do not give away our technical secrets. What puzzled the alien visitors most was how easily the humans switched between peaceful and military operations. The same mining laser that had carved through Vexitar dreadnoughts was back to cutting asteroids for ore processing. The railgun system that had launched devastating kinetic projectiles now moved cargo containers to waiting ships, and So-ra led tours of the facility almost every day showing alien engineers' equipment. That looked completely ordinary until they learned what it could do. Her modifications were elegant and simple, but the aliens struggled to understand how the same machinery could serve both functions so seamlessly. The key is not making specialized weapons, she explained to a group of crystalline Zeph scientists. The key is understanding that every tool can be a weapon if you know how to use it properly. We did not build military equipment. We just used our mining equipment in a different way. Dr. Choi Tae-min Medical Bay had become almost as famous as the weapons systems. Alien patients from across the galaxy came seeking treatment for conditions that their own doctors could not handle. Human medical techniques proved surprisingly effective on non-human biology, leading to breakthrough treatments for several species. The doctor was examining a young Nebula who had been injured in an industrial accident on their homeworld. The gaseous being glowed faintly as Choi Tae-min used modified, human surgical techniques to repair damaged energy channels in its molecular structure. Your people have a gift for healing. The Nebula parent communicated through electronic translation. We have traveled across the galaxy seeking treatment for our offspring. Human medicine succeeds where others have failed. Park Min-soo agricultural operations had expanded to feed the growing population. But more importantly, his farming methods were revolutionizing food production throughout human space. Colonies that had struggled to grow enough crops were now producing surplus food using techniques developed in his underground greenhouses. The farmer was training a group of colonists from the Ross 128 system who wanted to establish their own agricultural programs on a desert world similar to Harmony Station. His methods for growing food in artificial soil under controlled conditions could work anywhere humans chose to settle. Growing food is like fighting a battle, he told his students. Every day you use whatever resources you have available and you never give up when things get difficult. The plants want to grow. You just have to give them what they need. Security Chief Yoon Jae-wook had been promoted to Regional Defense Coordinator for all human colonies in the sector. His 12 guards had become the core of a training program that taught other settlements how to turn civilians into effective defenders when necessary. The training was not about creating soldiers. It was about teaching people to think tactically and use their environment as a weapon. Miners learned to operate weapon systems. Farmers learned to coordinate defensive positions. Engineers learned to modify equipment for military purposes. Every human can be a warrior when their home is threatened, Yoon Jae-wook explained to a class of colony administrators from different worlds. The secret is preparation and the willingness to fight with whatever tools you have available. The Galactic Council had officially recognized Harmony Station as a fortress world despite its small size and peaceful appearance. The designation normally applied to heavily militarized planets with massive defensive installations, but the Council admitted that classification systems needed updating. High Counselor Thex Moran had visited personally to meet with Lee Daeho and study the colony that had changed galactic politics. The ancient amphibian floated in a specialized tank while discussing diplomatic relations with the human administrator. Your species has forced us to reconsider many of our assumptions. Veximoran admitted, the concept of civilian infrastructure serving military purposes challenges traditional strategic thinking. We must develop new frameworks for understanding human capabilities. Military academies across the galaxy now taught courses on human adaptive warfare based entirely on the 18-minute battle. Alien officers studied Kim So-ra improvised weapon systems and Lee Dae-ho tactical decisions. The term going harmony station entered galactic slang, meaning to turn any available resource into a weapon, but perhaps the most important change was in how humans saw themselves. Throughout the galaxy, human colonies were no longer accepting being treated as the weakest species. Other settlements had developed their own creative solutions to threats and challenges. The Vega shipyards had converted their construction equipment into anti-ship weapons that could disable attacking vessels without destroying them. The Barnard Star Research Station used their scientific instruments as long-range sensors that could detect threats days before they arrived. The Wolf 359 trading post turned their cargo handling systems into defensive barriers that could protect entire settlements. Human colonies were networking together, sharing technical innovations and tactical information. Trading ships carried more than goods between settlements. They carried knowledge that made every human world stronger. The defensive networks they built made even aggressive alien species think twice about targeting human settlements. On New Terra, the largest human colony outside of Earth itself, Admiral Sarah Kim met with colonial representatives from across human space. The meeting was supposed to discuss trade agreements but had become a military planning session. We are no longer isolated outposts waiting for Earth to protect us. Admiral Kim told the assembled administrators, we are a network of fortified positions that can support each other and defend our territory. The colonies had proven they could handle military threats, but more importantly, they had proven they could work together without depending on Earth for leadership each year. Settlement had developed its own strengths while maintaining connections to the larger human community. Back on Harmony Station, Lee Dae-ho received daily reports from human colonies throughout the galaxy. Former mining outposts were now regional. Defense centers' agricultural settlements had become food production hubs that supplied entire sectors. Research stations shared scientific breakthroughs that benefited all human worlds. He thought about the scared colonists who had faced the Vextar fleet 6 months ago and compared them to the confident community that now called Harmony Station home. The same people who had once felt forgotten and helpless now knew they could defend themselves against any threat. The galaxy had spent 5 years treating humanity as a minor nuisance to be ignored or exploited. Now every major power understood that humans were the most adaptable and dangerous species they had encountered. The people who had seemed weakest were actually the strongest. Of all, Kim So-ra entered the observation tower, carrying a data pad with reports from the latest technical exchanges between colonies. Engineer teams across human space were sharing modifications and improvements that made their defensive systems even more effective. Administrator, she said, with the same grin she had worn during the battle. We just received confirmation that the Proxima Centauri colony successfully tested their new kinetic bombardment system. They can now defend against capital ships using modified ore processors. Lee Dae-ho nodded and looked out at the busy spaceport, where ships from dozens of species came to trade and learn. The view reminded him of what he had told his people before the battle. If someone wanted to take their home, they would have to earn it. The galaxy had learned that lesson in 18 minutes and would never forget it again. The first alien to receive news of the Harmony Station battle was Trade Minister Velkoth of the crystalline Zeph Empire. He was reviewing quarterly mining reports in his Crystal Palace when an urgent message arrived from Vextar Space. The message was short and almost impossible to believe. Hive Fleet Omega-7 destroyed by human mining colony in 18 minutes. No survivors. Total fleet loss. 47 warships eliminated by industrial equipment. Request immediate investigation. Velkoth read the message 3 times before his crystal body began glowing with shock. The Zeph had always considered the Vextar to be one of the strongest military forces in the galaxy. Their warships could conquer entire star systems and their hive. Mind coordination made them nearly unbeatable in combat. Yet according to this report, 300 humans with mining equipment had destroyed an entire Vextar battle fleet in less than 20 minutes. It seemed impossible, but the message came through official military channels with proper authentication codes. Within hours, similar reports were flooding communication networks across the galaxy. The Reptilian Korth Military Command received tactical analysis from their spy satellites. The Gaseous Nebula Collective intercepted Vextar distress signals before the fleet was destroyed. Even the ancient Eldrathi Consortium emerged from their pocket dimension to investigate the impossible battle. On the Galactic Council Station emergency, sessions were called as representatives from dozens of species tried to understand what had happened. The main chamber filled with aliens of every description, all talking at once in languages that sounded like music or grinding metal or electronic. Static High Counselor Thex Moran of the amphibious Aquari called for order with tentacles that glowed bright blue. The ancient creature had overseen galactic politics for over 2 centuries and had never seen the council in such chaos. We must examine. The battle recordings Thex Moran announced in the Universal Translation language. All available sensor data from the Harmony Station engagement will be analyzed by our military experts. The holographic displays around the chamber lit up with tactical information from the 18-minute battle. Alien military analysts watched in stunned silence as human mining equipment tore through Vextar warships. The crystalline Zeph, who had always dismissed human technology as primitive, now saw Kim Sora, jury-rigged weapon systems working with devastating effectiveness. "Look at this," the Zeph military advisor transmitted through light patterns. The humans converted their asteroid mining laser into a capital ship weapon in less than 30 minutes. Our own engineers would need months to make such modifications. The Reptilian Korth representatives hissed with what might have been respect or fear as they watched Administrator Lee Dae-ho coordinate the defense from his observation tower. The human leader had remained in the most exposed position throughout the battle, directing weapons fire, while alien missiles exploded around him. Their leader shows warrior courage. War Commander Siseloth observed his refusal to seek shelter while commanding. Battle brings honor to his species. Perhaps we have underestimated human fighting spirit. The Gaseous Nebula Collective analyzed the tactical data through mathematical probability models. Their calculations showed that the human victory should have been statistically impossible. The odds against a mining colony defeating a Vextar fleet were approximately 4 million to 1. Yet the impossible had happened, and now every major power in the galaxy was scrambling to reassess their assumptions about human capabilities. Intelligence agencies that had barely bothered to monitor human colonies were suddenly requesting detailed reports on every Earth settlement. Back on Earth, the news reached military headquarters in Geneva, just as Admiral Sarah Kim was finishing her morning briefing. The report from Harmony Station arrived with the highest priority encryption, and she read it twice before calling an emergency meeting of the Joint Chiefs. 300 colonists with mining equipment just destroyed 47 Vextar warships, she announced to the shocked faces around the conference table. The battle lasted 18 minutes, and there were no human casualties. General Martinez of the Space Marines leaned forward in his chair. "Admiral, are you certain this report is accurate? The Vextar are one of the most dangerous military forces we know about. The report comes directly from Colony Administrator Lee Dae-ho." Admiral Kim replied, "Lee Dae-ho was the officer we reassigned to Harmony Station after he questioned Operation Starfall. He has never filed a false report." The room fell silent as the military leaders processed this information. Lee Dae-ho had been sent to Harmony Station as punishment for asking difficult questions about a mission that had cost lives. Now the officer they had exiled had just won the most important victory in human military history. "We need to reevaluate our colonial defense strategies," General Chen of Strategic Planning said. "If Harmony Station can defeat a Vextar fleet with improvised weapons, what could our other colonies accomplish with proper military support?" Admiral Kim nodded and began issuing orders. "Send technical teams to analyze the Harmony Station weapon systems. Find out exactly how Engineer Kim Sora converted mining equipment into military hardware. We need to understand their methods and apply them to other colonies." But the most significant reaction came from the other human settlements scattered across the galaxy. These colonies had also been dismissed as weak and irrelevant by alien races. Now they suddenly realized they might not be as helpless as everyone assumed on New Geneva. Colony Administrator James Park received the Harmony Station battle report and immediately called his senior staff. The mining colony in the Tau Ceti system had similar equipment and a similar population to Harmony Station, if they can do it. So Kenwy Park told his engineers and security personnel, "We have the same kind of mining lasers and the same kind of people. Start working on defensive modifications immediately." Similar conversations were happening on dozens of human worlds. Colony administrators who had felt isolated and vulnerable now saw new possibilities. Engineer teams began studying their industrial equipment with military applications in mind. Security chiefs started training programs that treated every piece of machinery as a potential weapon. The Proxima Centauri Agricultural Collective began converting their crop processing equipment into kinetic weapons. The Europa ice mining station started modifying their thermal borers for anti-ship use. The Kepler Research Outpost turned their scientific instruments into sensor arrays that could track incoming threats across entire star systems. Within a week of the Harmony Station battle, human colonies throughout the galaxy were transforming from helpless settlements into improvised fortresses. The same creativity and determination that had made them successful colonists now made them dangerous opponents. Alien intelligence services that had ignored human activities for years suddenly found themselves overwhelmed with reports of military preparations. Human colonies were not just defending themselves, they were networking together and sharing technical innovations. The Galactic Council received reports of human settlements coordinating their defense plans. Colony administrators who had never met were exchanging technical specifications for weapon modifications. Trading ships carried more than cargo between human worlds. They carried tactical information and strategic advice. Trade Minister Velkoth of the Zeph Empire reviewed the intelligence reports with growing concern. The humans were not just lucky at Harmony Station. They were systematically applying the same principles to every colony in their territory. They are weaponizing their entire civilization, he transmitted to the Galactic Council. The humans have turned peaceful colonization into military expansion. We may have created a threat greater than the Vextar High Counselor. Thex Morin floated in his tank of specialized water and considered the implications. The galactic community had spent 5 years treating humanity as a minor annoyance to be ignored or exploited. Now every major power realized they had been catastrophically wrong about human capabilities. The species they thought was weakest might actually be the most dangerous. Of all the humans had proven they could turn anything into a weapon and anyone into a soldier. Their colonies were no longer vulnerable outposts. They were potential military bases that could threaten established galactic powers for the first time. In centuries, the Galactic Council faced a species that refused to accept the limitations other races tried to impose on them. The humans were not asking for permission to defend themselves. They were simply doing it with whatever resources they had available. The galaxy was about to learn that underestimating human ingenuity and determination was always a fatal mistake. Kim So-ra ran through the corridors of Harmony Station faster than she had ever moved in her life. Her mind was racing with possibilities as she reached the main engineering bay. The massive mining laser that normally cut through asteroids sat, silent in its housing, but she could see its potential as something much more dangerous. "Get me all the fusion charges from the mining storage," she shouted to the technicians who were running around trying to understand what was happening. "We need them now, and we need the magnetic ore sorters moved to defensive positions." The technicians stared at her like she had lost her mind, but they began following her orders anyway. Kim So-ra had never led them wrong before, and they trusted her judgment. Even in this impossible situation, she grabbed her tools and began working on the mining laser control systems. With lightning speed, Administrator Lee Dae-ho activated the colony emergency protocols from the main command center. Every screen in the settlement displayed tactical information and emergency procedures that no one had ever expected to use. The fusion reactor was pushed to maximum output to power systems that would need incredible amounts of energy. Security Chief Yoon Jae-wook coordinated the defensive preparations with military precision that surprised even himself. His 12 guards spread throughout the colony to protect critical systems, while civilians took shelter in reinforced areas. Dr. Choi Tai-min converted his medical bay into a command center where he could monitor the entire battle and treat wounded colonists. The Vextar fleet approached Harmony Station with complete confidence. Commander Beta 9 watched the human colony grow larger on the tactical displays, expecting to see defensive shields activating or weapon systems coming online. Instead, the settlement looked exactly the same as it had in the intelligence reports. A small mining operation with no apparent military capability. This will be easier than expected. Beta 9 communicated to the fleet. Prepare for planetary bombardment. The humans are not even attempting to defend themselves. But the Vextar commander was wrong. The humans were preparing to defend themselves in ways that no alien species had ever imagined. Kim Sora had transformed their peaceful mining operation into something that should not have been possible. The massive industrial laser designed to cut asteroids now pointed toward space with targeting systems, jury-rigged from mining equipment. The magnetic ore sorters that normally separated different metals from raw rock had been repositioned as railgun accelerators. Chunks of refined iron and nickel sat ready to be launched at velocities that would turn them into devastating kinetic weapons. Park Min-soo had abandoned his greenhouses to help load makeshift ammunition, while Dr. Choi Tae-min monitored power distribution from his improvised command post fusion charges meant for excavating. New mining tunnels were now connected to proximity sensors and guidance systems cannibalized from mining drones. The result was a collection of improvised missiles that could track targets and deliver explosive payloads with surprising accuracy, all systems ready. Kim So-ra reported to Lee Dae-ho over the communication network. The mining laser is at full power and the railgun system is loaded. We have 47 fusion charges converted to guided missiles, and every mining drone has been weaponized. Lee Dae-ho took a deep breath and looked out the observation window at the approaching alien fleet. 47 warships, including 3 massive dreadnoughts, were closing in on his home and his people. He thought about the 300 colonists who trusted him to keep them safe and make the right decisions, fire everything he ordered. The mining laser erupted with blinding light that crossed the space between Harmony Station and the Vextar fleet in seconds. The concentrated beam struck the lead dreadnought directly in its forward section. The alien ship armor that was designed to withstand energy weapons from other warships melted like butter under the industrial cutting. Laser Commander Beta 9 watched in shock as its flagship lost structural integrity and began breaking apart. The mining laser continued firing, sweeping across the Vextar formation and cutting through ship after ship with impossible precision. Industrial equipment was not supposed to be this effective against military vessels. The railgun system opened fire next, launching refined metal projectiles at incredible speeds. Each chunk of iron or nickel hit with kinetic energy equivalent to nuclear weapons. Vextar ships built to resist energy attacks crumpled. Under the purely physical impacts, their shields and armor were useless against solid matter. Moving at such extreme velocities, Kim So-ra monitored the weapons systems from her engineering station and grinned with fierce satisfaction as she watched alien warships explode on her targeting screens. The mining equipment was performing better than she had dared hope. Every modification she had made was working perfectly. The guided fusion charges launched next, homing in on Vextar vessels with tracking systems that had been designed to follow ore deposits. The explosions lit up space as the improvised missiles found their targets and detonated with devastating effect. Ships that had survived the laser and railgun attacks succumbed too. The fusion explosions' mining drones that normally collected rock samples became kamikaze weapons, packed with industrial explosives. They swarmed the remaining Vextar ships like angry insects, overwhelming point defense systems through sheer numbers. Each drone carried enough explosive to cripple a cruiser, and they seemed to appear from every direction at once. Commander Beta 9 tried desperately to coordinate a counterattack, but the humans kept changing tactics in ways that made no sense. Mining satellites were redirecting communication beams to jam Vextar coordination signals. Ore processing chemicals were being expelled. As corrosive clouds that ate through alien hull materials, the Vextar had come expecting to fight a standard military engagement against conventional weapons. Instead, they faced an enemy that turned every piece of peaceful equipment into instruments of war. The humans were using industrial processes as military tactics, and it was working with terrifying effectiveness. Yoon Jawa coordinated the defensive fire from his security station, calling out target priorities and ammunition status. His guards operated weapon systems they had never trained on, while civilians loaded ammunition and maintained equipment under combat conditions. Everyone worked together with desperate efficiency. Park Min-soo found himself operating a railgun targeting system using skills he had developed for precision farming. The same steady hands that planted seeds now guided kinetic projectiles toward alien warships. Dr. Choi Tai-min managed power distribution between weapon systems with the same careful attention he gave to patient care. 15 minutes into the battle, the Vextar fleet was in complete disarray. Half their ships were destroyed or disabled, and the survivors were taking damage faster than they could retreat. The humans had turned their mining colony into a fortress that outgunned military installations. Beta 9 realized with growing horror that it had made a catastrophic error. The intelligence reports were completely wrong. These humans were not weak or helpless. They were the most dangerous opponents the Vextar had ever encountered. Their ability to weaponize anything around them made them incredibly deadly. The alien commander tried to order a retreat, but Kim Sora had anticipated this possibility. Her modified communication satellites were jamming Vextar frequencies and preventing coordinated withdrawal. The alien ships were scattered and confused, unable to support each other effectively. 17 minutes after the battle began, the mining laser found Beta 9 flagship again. The concentrated beam sliced through the command section where the alien commander was desperately trying to understand how primitive humans had destroyed its fleet. Beta 9 died, still unable to comprehend what had happened. The last Vextar ship exploded in a brilliant flash exactly 18 minutes after Lee Dae-ho had given the order to fire Kim So-ra, shut down the weapon systems, and looked at her sensor displays in amazement. The entire alien fleet was gone. Nothing remained but expanding clouds of debris and fading energy signatures. "We did it," she whispered, then louder. "We actually did it." We won. Throughout Harmony Station, people emerged from their emergency positions and stared at the tactical displays showing empty space where moments before, a massive alien fleet had threatened their home. 300 colonists had just accomplished something that should have been impossible. Lee Dae-ho slumped in his chair as the adrenaline faded and the reality of their victory sank in. They had turned mining equipment into weapons and defeated 47 warships in 18 minutes. The galaxy was about to learn that underestimating humans was always a fatal mistake. Commander Hivemind Beta 9 floated in the dark command chamber of the Vextar flagship, studying holographic displays that showed the approaching human colony. The insectoid creature was 12 feet tall with 4 arms that ended in razor-sharp claws. Its black carapace gleamed under the red emergency lighting, and its compound eyes reflected the tactical screens with cold calculation. The Vextar had been watching human settlements for months, looking for the perfect target to test their new weapon systems. Harmony Station appeared to be exactly what they needed. A small, weak colony with minimal defenses and only 300 soft-skinned humans hiding on a worthless rock at the edge of space. Beta 9 clicked its mandibles in satisfaction as it reviewed the intelligence reports. The humans had 12 guards with outdated rifles and armor that looked like it belonged in a scrapyard. Their fusion reactor was old and inefficient. Their mining equipment was basic, and their communication systems were barely functional. Everything about the colony screamed weakness and desperation. The Vextar fleet consisted of 47 warships, including 3 massive dreadnoughts that could crack planets with their main cannons. Each ship carried hundreds of warrior drones equipped with energy weapons and personal shields. The smallest Vextar cruiser had more firepower than the entire human colony could muster. "This will be perfect for training our young warriors," Beta 9 communicated to its subordinates through the Hivemind network. "The humans will provide enough resistance to make the exercise interesting, but not enough to cause real casualties among our forces." The plan was simple and brutal. The fleet would drop out of hyperspace, close to the planet, and begin bombardment of the colony. The dreadnoughts would destroy any defensive positions while the smaller ships landed troops to capture survivors for biological study. After the humans were dealt with, the Vextar would strip mine the planet for rare metals and move on to the next target. Beta 9 had chosen this particular human settlement because intelligence suggested it was the weakest of all Earth colonies. The humans had been exiled there as punishment or had volunteered to escape problems back on their homeworld. Either way, they were the bottom of human society and therefore the least likely to put up effective resistance. What Beta 9 did not understand was that humans often performed their best when they had nothing left to lose. The commander had studied human military history, but only the major battles between organized armies. It had never bothered to learn about human creativity under pressure or their tendency to turn everyday objects into weapons when survival was at stake. Meanwhile, on Harmony Station, engineer Kim Sora was running routine maintenance checks on the long-range sensor array when she noticed something unusual. The sensors were picking up energy signatures that did not match any known human spacecraft. The readings were getting stronger, which meant whatever was out there was coming toward them. She checked the sensor calibration twice to make sure she was not seeing false readings, but the results were the same. Unknown ships were approaching fast, and they were big. Much bigger than any civilian vessel that might visit a remote mining colony. Kim Sora immediately contacted Security Chief Yoon Jae-wook over the communication system. "Chief, you need to see this right away," she said, her voice tight with concern. "I am detecting multiple large vessels approaching our position." Yoon Jae-wook arrived at the sensor station within minutes and took one look at the display readings. His face went pale as he counted the energy signatures. 47 ships were heading directly toward Harmony Station, and they were moving in perfect military formation. "Get Administrator Lee Dae-ho here immediately," Yoon Jae-wook ordered while starting to activate the colony emergency protocols. "We have a serious problem." Lee Dae-ho arrived at the sensor station just as the unknown fleet dropped out of hyperspace on the edge of the solar system. The ships were clearly alien in design, with organic curves and bioengineered hulls that pulsed with internal light. Kim Sora enhanced the sensor image, and all three humans stared at the massive vessels filling their screens. "Those are Vextar warships," Lee Dae-ho said quietly, recognizing the distinctive insectoid. Designed from intelligence briefings, Earth Command had shown the colonists I count at least 3 dreadnoughts and dozens of smaller vessels. "What do they want here?" Yoon Jae-wook asked, though he already suspected the answer. "They want to destroy us," Lee Dae-ho replied, his voice steady despite the fear in his eyes. "The Vextar do not negotiate or take prisoners. They are here to test their weapons on what they think is a helpless human target." Kim Sora stared at the tactical display showing the approaching alien fleet. Any reasonable person would begin evacuation procedures immediately or try to contact the aliens to negotiate surrender. But something about the situation made her angry instead of afraid. "These bugs think we are weak," she said, her hands clenching into fists. "They think they can just fly in here and destroy everything we have built without a fight." "Administrator, what are your orders?" Yoon Jae-wook asked while his hand moved instinctively toward his weapon. The security chief was ready to fight, but he needed direction from the colony leader. Lee Dae-ho looked around the sensor station at his people. Kim Sora had grease under her fingernails from keeping their equipment running. Yoon Jae-wook had spent years protecting colonists who had nowhere else to go. Dr. Choi Tae-min was probably in his medical bay preparing to treat injuries from whatever was coming. Park Min-soo was likely in his greenhouses tending plants that fed the entire colony. These people had chosen to come to the edge of space and build something meaningful. They had turned a barren rock into a home where 300 humans lived and worked together. Every day they solved problems that should have been impossible with equipment that should not have worked. They had proven that humans could thrive anywhere if they refused to give up. "We are not running," Lee Dae-ho said firmly, surprising himself with the conviction in his voice. "This is our home. We built it with our own hands, and we are not going to let some alien bugs take it away from us." Kim Sora grinned and cracked her knuckles. "All right then," she said, her eyes gleaming with determination. "Let me show these Vextar what humans can do when they get really angry." Yoon Jae-wook activated the colony-wide emergency communication system. "All residents report to designated emergency stations immediately," he announced. "This is not a drill. We are under attack by hostile alien forces." Throughout the colony, people stopped what they were were doing and looked at each other with shock and fear. But mixed with that fear was something else. Something that the Vextar had not expected from what they thought were weak humans. There was anger and determination and a stubborn refusal to simply lie down and die. Park Min-soo abandoned his greenhouse and headed for the armory. Dr. Choi Tai-min began converting his medical bay into a command center. Miners grabbed tools that could serve as weapons. Technicians started powering up systems that had never been used for military purposes. The Vextar fleet continued its approach, confident that victory was assured. Beta 9 studied the sensor readings from the human colony and saw exactly what it expected to see. A small settlement, with minimal defenses that would be destroyed within minutes of the attack beginning. What the alien commander did not realize was that it had just made the biggest mistake of its very long life. The Vextar had chosen to attack humans who had nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. They had picked a fight with people who turned problems into solutions and obstacles into opportunities. In 18 minutes, Beta 9 would be dead, and its entire fleet would be scattered debris floating in space. The galaxy would learn that the humans they had dismissed as weak were actually the most dangerous species they had ever encountered. But first, the people of Harmony Station had to prove that human ingenuity and determination could overcome any odds. Lee Dae-ho woke up at 5 in the morning, just like every other day on Harmony Station. The small metal room he called home was cold, and the recycled air tasted stale. But he did not mind anymore. After 3 years on this rock at the edge of space, he had gotten used to worse things. He put on his faded blue jumpsuit and walked through the narrow corridors of the colony. The walls were made of cheap metal panels that rattled when the wind outside got strong. Through the small windows, he could see the gray landscape of Kepler 442c, stretching endlessly under a pale orange sky. 2 small suns hung low on the horizon, casting long shadows across the barren ground. The colony was tiny compared to the massive cities back on Earth. Only 300 people lived here in a cluster of connected buildings that looked more like a mining camp than a real settlement. The main dome housed the community center where people ate meals and held meetings. Around it, smaller domes contained living quarters, workshops, and storage areas. Everything was built to last but not to look pretty. Lee Dae-ho was the colony administrator, which sounded important, but really meant he handled paperwork and tried to solve problems with no money and no help from Earth. He was 52 years old with graying hair and tired eyes, but he still cared about the people under his watch. The government back home had sent him here as punishment for asking too many questions about a military mission that went wrong. 5 years ago, he thought his career was over. Now he just wanted to keep his people alive and healthy. He stopped by the kitchen dome where Park Min-soo was already working. The farmer was a stocky man in his 40s who never seemed to stop. Moving his underground greenhouses produced fresh vegetables that kept everyone from getting sick on processed food rations. Park Min-soo had learned to grow crops in artificial soil under artificial light, and somehow made it work. "Good morning, Administrator," Park Min-soo said while checking his tomato plants. "These should be ready for harvest next week." "That is great news," Lee Dae-ho replied. "We could all use some fresh food. How are the potatoes coming along?" "Park." Min-soo grinned and wiped dirt from his hands. "Better than expected." "The new fertilizer mix Kim So-ra made from recycled waste is working perfectly. We might even have surplus to trade with the next supply ship." Kim So-ra was the colony engineer and probably the smartest person Lee Dae-ho had ever met. She was 35 years old with short black hair and oil stains permanently under her fingernails. She could fix anything with spare parts and determination. When the main fusion reactor started making strange noises last month, she had crawled inside it with a wrench and somehow made it run better than when it was newly. Dae-ho found her in the engineering section lying under a massive machine that processed ore from the mining operations. Her legs stuck out from beneath it and she was humming while she worked. "Kim So-ra," he called out, "is everything working properly today?" She slid out from under the machine with a wide smile on her face. "Everything is running perfectly. Administrator, I just finished upgrading the ore processor to handle the new mineral samples we found last week. The efficiency is up by 15%. How do you always manage to make our old equipment work better?" Lee Dae-ho asked Kim. Sora laughed and stood up, brushing dust off her jumpsuit. These machines are like puzzles, Administrator. Once you understand how they think, you can make them do almost anything. The trick is not being afraid to try new ideas. That attitude was what made Harmony Station work, despite being forgotten by Earth and ignored by the rest of the galaxy. The colonists did not give up when equipment broke down or when supply ships were late. They found solutions and made things work. People like Kim So-ra turned problems into opportunities. The medical bay was Lideho. Next stop, Dr. Choi Tae-min was examining a miner who had twisted his ankle in the tunnels. The doctor was a gentleman in his 60s who had volunteered to come to Harmony Station because he wanted to help people who really needed medical care. "How is our patient doing?" Lee Dae-ho asked. "Just a minor sprain," Dr. Choi replied while wrapping the injured ankle. "He will be back to work in a few days if he rests properly." The doctor looked at the miner sternly. "No heavy lifting for at least a week." The miner nodded and thanked the doctor before limping out. Dr. Choi had treated everything from broken bones to severe depression since arriving at the colony. He was not just a medical doctor, but also someone people came to when they felt homesick or worried about their families back on Earth. Lee Dae-ho saved his most important stop for last. The security office was a small room with outdated computers and weapon racks that held rifles older than some of the colonists. Security Chief Yoon Jae-wook was studying patrol schedules and maintenance reports for their small fleet of vehicles. "Chief, how are our defenses looking today?" Lee Dae-ho asked. Yoon Jae-wook looked up from his work. He was a serious man in his 40s, who took his job protecting the colony very seriously, even though they had never faced any real threats. The 12 guards under his command were good people, but they had basic training and equipment that belonged in a museum. "Everything is functioning within normal parameters," Administrator Yoon Jae-wook replied. "The perimeter sensors are working and all guard posts are manned. We completed a full patrol of the mining tunnels this morning without any problems." Lee Dae-ho nodded, but both men knew the truth. Their defenses were designed to handle accidents and minor disputes, not real military threats. If anyone actually wanted to attack Harmony Station, there was not much they could do to stop them. The colony had been built in peacetime when nobody expected human settlements to face hostile aliens, but that was the reality of life on the frontier. Earth Command had given them the minimum equipment needed to survive and told them to make the best of it. The Galactic Council of Alien Races barely acknowledged that humans existed. When Earth joined the galactic community 5 years ago, the other species had laughed at human technology and military power. The insectoid Vextar considered humans too slow and weak to be worth their attention. The crystalline Zeph thought human technology was primitive compared to their advanced systems. The reptilian Korth saw humans as prey animals that might provide entertainment in hunting games. None of the alien races took humanity seriously enough to consider them a threat. They gave humans the worst planets in the galaxy and expected them to struggle and eventually fail quietly. Harmony Station was exactly the kind of settlement they expected from weak humans. A tiny mining operation on a worthless rock with barely enough people to keep the lights on. What the aliens did not understand was that humans like Lee Dae-ho and his colonists did not see themselves as weak or helpless. They saw themselves as builders and problem solvers who had come to the edge of space to create something better. Every day they worked together to turn their barren planet into something resembling home. They grew food where nothing should grow. They fixed machines that should have been replaced. Years ago, they took care of each other like family and found joy in small victories like a successful harvest or a smoothly running reactor. They did not know they were supposed to be the weakest species in the galaxy. They were too busy living their lives and building their future. As Lee Dae-ho walked back to his office to handle the daily paperwork, he felt proud of what they had accomplished. The colony was not much to look at from the outside, but it was home to 300 people who had chosen to build something together rather than give up when things got difficult. He had no way of knowing that their quiet determination and creative problem-solving were about to be tested in ways none of them could imagine. The galaxy was about to discover that underestimating humans was always a dangerous mistake.